And we're live. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am so honored that we have a guest today. Thunder and I are very, very excited to have a gentleman who is one of the most recognized voices in the entire world. Let me just build it up a little bit. He was the star host of American Top 40 from 1988 to 1995. He's got a place where I used to get drunk quite a lot at, Cabo Wabo, down in Cabo San Lucas. He's got Cabo Wabo Radio. He hosts The Top of the World, and I think what's going to be my favorite show, which I haven't listened to yet, Mental Radio, which I'm told is about UFOs and the paranormal, which I am a total fan of, and Thunder is an expert on. And Shadoe Stevens, welcome to the show.
Yeah, clearly you have great taste and extraordinarily high
IQ. One of them I have. Shadoe, I have a first question to you. I love your logo, by the way, with the shadow. I mean, I love logos.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a marketing kind of a guru, but I do have one question to start the show off. How and when did you come up with that name?
It was given to me by God. And here's the way the story goes. I was on my way to Boston to go to a new job. And I stopped in Alamogordo, New Mexico to call them and tell them, I'm excited, I'm on my way. And I went into a phone booth, and across the street was a huge fence that said Atomic Testing Range, do not enter. It was a clear day, around noon. And I made the call, and I said, I'm on my way. And they said, yeah, it's great. And by the way, we're going to change your name. We want to call you Shadow Man or Shadow Lane. And I was horrified. It's the dumbest idea I ever heard in my life. And I was, don't get carried away. By the time I get there, I'll have some options for you. And I drove helter-skelter across the country 100 miles an hour going Rodney Lane, Randy Fields, anything I could think of, pulling notions off the side of the highway. And by the time I got to Boston 2 days later and drove in, I heard promos on the air. And beginning Monday, Shadoe Stevens on WRKO. And I was horrified. And I was humiliated. I was like, I don't know how am I ever going to live with this. And I had to find a sense of humor about it. And in finding the sense of humor, it was creating a backstory. And the backstory was, when people, well, that's not your real name, is it? It's Native American.
Not coming from South Dakota or North Dakota.
Well, I said, well, do you know what tribe? And I said, well, I'm from North Dakota, so I suspect Sioux or Mandan. I'm not really sure. But, well, do you know what it means? It means he who walks with the light. I went, really? And so the questions would end. And I've been telling people it's God's baffling sense of humor ever since. And the name gave me my own sense of humor, and pretty much everything I've done, except maybe American Top 40, has been integrated with parody, humor, funny stuff.
Well, humor is the best medicine.
American Top 40, I had to be, I had to follow up the world's most earnest man, and so it was a real challenge for me at first.
Well, did you have a funny bone as a kid?
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, you have to have in North Dakota. There's not a lot of, especially in those days, there wasn't a lot to do. You better have a sense of humor, or you go insane.
Yeah, well, the sense of humor is you can't buy it, borrow it, steal it.
It's the only sense that makes any sense, and the only sense that makes the other senses worthwhile.
Well, that's very sensible. That makes a lot of sense.
I believe that with my heart and soul. That's what, and if you check out Mental Radio, and I don't do it anymore, but I did it for a couple of years, and everything on the website I wrote and created and recorded, and all the best of, and everything is all still there at mentalradio.net. And it was described as mind-expanding talk about consciousness, the power of the mind, dreams, aliens, mystics, parallel dimensions, and fabricated information told with great sincerity and absolute conviction.
Well, that brings me to my next question, because I'm a ufologist, and I don't. That's what I use to fall asleep at night. I turn on YouTube and I watch another documentary on UFOs, and it puts me to sleep in about 5 or 10 minutes. But I totally believe, just by going, watching the show Ancient Aliens and seeing what's been on the planet in written form, throughout the ages, about extraterrestrials. So my question to you is, what's your thoughts? Have you seen a UFO?
I have not. I have interviewed a bunch of people and wanted to believe every one of them, and heard some of the funniest, wildest stories of anything I've ever investigated. And that's why I wanted to do Mental Radio, because it was as if Monty Python looked into, the inexplicable. So everything about it was, we are open, but we have a sense of humor. So one of the guys I interviewed, I can't remember his name. I could probably remember it if I looked for a minute, said that he was visited in 1997, and he was driving an 18-wheeler at the time. And that night he grew 2 shoe sizes. And then the story got weird. It's one of the great, and I talked to him for almost an hour and tried to poke holes in it, and I'm telling you, he had an entire lexicon of terminology, and was you couldn't get through it. I mean, either he really believed it or he had this so well rehearsed. But he talked about the sanctioned races and the fact that the Earth is surrounded by however many thousands of flying saucers or alien aircraft at any given time, and
well, let me jump in.
All of his terminology was pretty amazing. And then he said at the end that he was an artist on 63 different planets. So I went to his website and looked up his art, and it was pretty good. I don't know.
Okay, on my little talk show, I've interviewed a Reiki, I think that's how you say it, Reiki healer. You know what a Reiki healer is?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And she, I interviewed for a half an hour. She said, how long is the interview going to last? I said, as long as we're having fun. And we went for a half an hour, and she had the time of her life. We talked about, motivation, which is I'm all about. This whole show is about motivation, about education, about, inspiration. And she just had the time of her life. And what it really struck me towards the end of the interview, she told me not only does she heal her clients, but she has a few extraterrestrials as clients. So I titled the episode "Healers Also Heal Extraterrestrials," and it got a lot of views in 2 days, 155. For me, that's a lot. And but just getting back to my personal experiences, I've interviewed 3 other people that saw, like a pilot that saw, and my friend's a pilot, and he's seen many things. But my son, who's the most level-headed kid in the world, you might have met him, Lester Cook. He was a professional tennis player. And just a level-headed kid. His wife saw an orb come out of their tree in Ojai and hover above the ground. It was about the size of a softball, glowing at night and without any sound, and it shot off to the horizon. So she immediately yelled for Lester, "Come see this! Come see what I just saw!" And she's explaining it, and of course she's out of her mind, thinking what she just saw. It shakes you, when you first see something like that. And as she's explaining it, it comes back, hovers again about 40 feet off the ground in their backyard in Hawaii, and shoots off to the horizon. No sound, just a ball of light. Obviously it's not ball lightning. I love how the pessimists or the naysayers say it's got to be something. And it is got to be something. But these then I did a little research on ball light on orbs, and since the World War II. The American and the Japanese pilots always saw these glowing orbs flying around their aircraft, and they thought it was always the other army or the other Air Force, some kind of secret weapon. But no. So what is what's your feelings there?
I don't. I am the sum of all the people I've spoken to, because I don't have a direct experience myself. I I'm a very spiritual person. I've meditated since 1969, and in the last 7 years, I've meditated an average of an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. So
wow.
I have transcendental kind of experiences, and it doesn't happen all the time, because sometimes it's just hard, and sometimes it is indescribable. The kind of thing you can't put in words because it just diminishes the experience. It's an entirely experiential kind of thing. But his name was Brian DeFlores. You should try and talk to him. You would love this conversation. And another one that was great was Dr. Brooks Agnew. And Dr. Brooks Agnew is a scientist who talked about the hollow earth, and how he was trying to put together at the time the financing to be able to sail into an anomaly in the Arctic Circle that had opened up as a result of climate change, and at least theoretically might lead into the hollow earth, which he described in endlessly. And I want to believe that too.
Well, what about the flat Earth? I mean, a lot of people are actually advocates of the flat Earth, which I don't believe that one. But I just know. Have you watched the series Ancient Aliens, Shadoe?
Yeah.
So just the fact of 2,000-ton blocks that we can't move with today's technology, and the pyramids being built, with precision. These blocks, these 40-ton blocks, had to be laid every 20 minutes, day and night for 10 years, with precision, with the engineering that is off the charts. Sometimes it's just mind-boggling to think about how these things occurred. There's just so many.
I totally agree.
It's mind-boggling.
There aren't any simple answers.
Thunder, what's your answer to all this?
Well, I was when I was listening to Shadoe's talking about the truck driver in '96. The first name that came to my mind, of course, was Brian DeFlores. So, thanks for the confirmation. I've met Brian. His shop out there in Sedona is one of the coolest shops that I ever stepped foot into. And he sold his shop to another lady that was going to carry our technology, but I later backed out of it. I just wasn't on page with her. But yeah, Brian was said we were. I was going to the movie Geronimo with, or not Geronimo. Dang, who's the guy with Sidekick Indian and Tonto?
Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger, yeah, sorry. I was in line to see the Lone Ranger, and I was buying my ticket out in Sedona. I turned around and I said, "Oh, hey, there was Brian DeFlores is going to the same movie I am." That's funny. I've studied Brian's work. I've quantified Brian's work, and his art is unique. I ran an experiment in my lab where I put 40 of Brian's work. Pieces of work around my lab, and then pulled frequencies from it to see if it had an effect on matter. So there's something to what Brian has done. Yes, I'm an advocate of Brian DeFlores. I'm a ufologist myself. I was the guy who during the Coast to Coast AM, George Norrie and Bill Bird's meet and greet at Ghost to Ghost out on the Queen Mary. Was showing people how to go ghost hunting, and everybody's like, "Well, what do you do for fun, Thunder?" I said, "Well, I take people out and go UFO hunting," and that's when Bill Bird jumped up and said, "We just shot a pilot show. That's a wonderful title." Well, he's got his own blinking issues that I stay far away from. But it's not hard. You guys want to see UFOs? Go get yourself some night vision goggles and a high power laser, and you'll be surprised when you shoot that laser in a dark part of the sky, and then turn your night vision on. The light from the laser will light up. It's like looking daytime. Really? Then you will see ships come around. They'll start. They will start to check out what the laser is. And you shut the laser off, and they're like, "Oh man, I hope Thunder ain't recording this." And they'll just take away. There's nights I went out there and seen beehives of stuff out there. So, the biggest case I was talking to Monty about here last week was, and it's the giant white elephant in the room that you can't get around. That's the Billy Meyer case. I have analyzed biophoton, analyzed photographic evidence. I have listened to the audio recordings. I have biophoton analyzed those as well. And there seems to be a pattern that no synthesizer on the planet can do. You know, so it's and hey, I'm a big fan, brother. After reaching for the stars and we lost a legend in radio. Hey, you were the guy that I sat back and was recording every week to get my top 40. So I appreciate it, really do. Carrying on the torch.
I appreciate that.
You have the second best voice I've ever heard, Shadoe. Ronald Reagan was a friend, and he called me when he was governor. He dated my mother. I put the picture of her on a date with him on my cover of my book I wrote, and his voice was like butter, like yours. You know, you have a great voice. But
question.
What's that? What's that?
What do you do for fun?
For fun, I like to go to movies.
Right on.
Movies a lot. We go to a lot of movies. That's because then I can just shut my brain down. Other than that, I mostly work. I have lots of projects, and they are in a wide range of areas. There is a full-length animated feature that I'm talking to DreamWorks about, and a few others. There is a series that is a sci-fi comedy, kind of Men in Black meets Shaun of the Dead. It's funny and interesting and kind of hard to describe in a couple of words, but that I just finished the script on, and we're talking to a couple of people about that. I have two different shows with Vin DeBona, who's the guy who created America's Funniest Videos, and we're taking those out. And I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. I've got about 10 major projects that are in various states. Besides that, I do art when I have time.
So you like to produce, in other words, you're a producer.
I have to stay creative all the time, and it's a part of it is about staying sane. Because left to its own, the brain defaults to finding what's wrong and making a list, and then instantly telling a narrative that you kind of compelled to believe in, and then you start listening to disappointments, heartaches, sadness, humiliations, endless amounts of failure, and it makes a tale for staying in bed. So I am, walking the tightrope, breath by breath, in gratitude for the wonder of my life. Well, if
you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. You heard that saying 1,000 times.
Well, that's true, and by staying grateful and doing for others, you stay out of trouble with your own brain. And I find that the more even with failure, I just have gotten better at all the things I do, whether it's writing or art or creating projects or making presentations. I have a studio that I can do almost anything I can think of without having to rely on anybody else. I learned all the programs, and I can be here for hours and hours on end creating ideas and then trying to put them in motion. And that's a good thing.
That's my favorite thing is producing. I produced Ray Charles on his 50th birthday at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in 1980. I don't know if you went to that concert or not, but I did it in memory of my mother. My parents both passed away when I was 9, and he was her favorite entertainer. And in those days, it was a little simpler to do business. I basically just called up Ray Charles's camp and said, I want to put him in concert. And they said, well, his birthday's coming up. That would be great, his 50th birthday. So then I hung up the phone and I called around and called the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion and said, I'm producing Ray Charles on his 50th birthday. Do you have an opening? And it was that simple. You know, they didn't have computers back then. They now that everyone's checked out on a nanosecond what your history is. But it was a great concert, and I've done, you know, you've got to take risks. I've worked in over 79 different fields in my life, and from show business to construction. I know you're aware of silos, right, in North Dakota? I built a silo as an 18-year-old, 3-month job. And after that 120-foot structure was standing there, I looked at it and said, great. I certainly wasn't going to build a second one, you know. But I always tell people, you've got to take some risk. Like when you rode a bike, you fell down, you scraped your knee, you put a Band-Aid on it, you got back up, and you rode it again. And you've got to take risks. You've got to take challenges out there. I can't see getting stuck in a rut doing, and some people do it their whole life. They plug this A into B, A into B, A into B, 8 hours a day, and go home, and they do that for their life. And it's never been for me, and certainly it wasn't for you. And Thunder is way out there. By the way, Thunder, you need to tell Shadoe a little bit about quantum mechanics. I'm sure he knows some of it. But what we're going to do, Shadoe, as I told you earlier, we're going to send you, because you're going to be part of the Be Fantastic movement, one of our logo, which when put on your phone and used as wallpaper will eliminate the EMF emanating from your phone. You do know about EMF.
Well, he's been surrounded by it. I'm sure his entire career, a great amount. Obviously, in studios and such like that. And by the way, we do share a similar interest in being at Great Minds together. We both have sons named Andrew. Very good.
Well, actually, I don't have a son named Andrew. I have a son-in-law named Andrew, however.
Oh, son-in-law. Okay. You married him. Okay, I got you. I was reading a little bit there last night. Andrew, really? Okay. Coincidence.
Andrew West. And he's a terrific actor and an amazing artist, a really good guy.
Right on. Quantum mechanics, well, when I looked at, it was back in 2003, 2004, I was a recipient of a huge award in California for some environmental work that I did by stopping pollution. And at this banquet, it was held at Johnny Cochran's house about a month or two after he had passed. And there were people that were walking up to me and asking me then, they said, Thunder, what is this stuff about EMF radiation, and is our cell phones dangerous? And my answer then was, well, I really don't want to make a comment on that, but I will say this, I do not allow my children to use the cell phone. I'm not a bad dad. I just understand that their skulls are a little thin, and the radiation that is emitting off of these devices are going to be. We haven't had any long-term studies, and I see them being, serious problems in the future. So then I went to work to design a system that would render those inert. I had my third-party validation at Intertech study, 71-page study done, and set the world record by canceling out these harmful signals. And we can do this with frequencies. There was a gentleman back in the 20s named Raymond Royal Rife, and he at the time had the world's largest microscope. So he was able to see patterns that were jumping in his experiments, while his wife's family was chanting in the room next door. And what I did was kind of take a look at what great minds of the last century have done, and tried to understand what their work was, and then take it to the bridge to formulate it into an application process. And utilizing frequencies in a quantum world is not theoretical anymore. In fact, 60% of what is taught at advanced colleges and universities today is in the phenomenon of the hologram. But yet they're not teaching the how-to or the process, only the in theory. 17 years ago, I broke that door open, and I had a success. I was able then to capture a frequency into a hologram, and then have it manipulate matter as we know it, and change the way things behave. Monty has a wonderful logo. It's Be Fantastic, and it fits with what two parts. The cell phone having the problem I see with our with a lot of our health issues today, but also with nature's bee trying to find its way home. The cell towers are preventing that from happening. And so it makes a good logo. It's a great advertising piece on top of it, and awareness to Marty's cause, to having people be fantastic in a way of helping their health as well, and the bee. So with 63,000 applications. And I've done this with only a few films out there I've worked with, and we can actually put at the production site, we can put devices around microphones and cameras, and that just attach easily, that go through post-production. And as you're watching the movie, even if it's a bad flick, you can go home from the theater and your diabetes is gone, or your cancer, very loud, is gone, due to frequencies that are coming off the screen. Hollywood shot these subliminals, enjoy Coke and popcorn, and then half the audience got up and went for the concession stand. That type of similar, I guess, to understand a layman's term, but a little more complex. We use the screen as an audio, screen as a visual, and the speaker as an audio to bombard our bodies with frequencies that can, basically make us healthy.
That's a good idea. We like that.
On our website, befantastictoday.com, Shadow, you'll see a video I shot with live some years ago of a different hologram. We're going to send you one that's been or epigenetic genetics. We're going to send you one that's the logo now, but the one that's in the video there does the same thing. And we showed it on a phone, working with the meter on it, the EMF sensor, and then we took it off and we put it back on. So it's a live shot of showing it working in real time. It's amazing.
Very cool. Well, I'll have to check that out. I'm excited. I like people doing positive work. I did this whole art piece, the latest art pieces I did. One is called Doomsday and the other is called Hope, and they're giant, like 10-foot long by 5-foot tall mixed media presentations. And it's along that same line. It's like where your mind is placed, there you are. And Doomsday is this collective assault of negative and horrifying images that we're bombarded with 24 hours a day on television and new media, and all of the atrocities, real and imagined, including all the entertainment things that are all beasts and a creature from the Black Lagoon and zombies, and meanwhile atomic blasts and beheadings and heroin. And then the other is called hope. And hope basically says that amid the madness of a world in turmoil, at this moment, with every breath we take, there are countless millions in every religion and spiritual practice praying for peace and strength and solutions and courage and the power to triumph over its adversity. And that's all religions, and it's about the beauty that faith has created, and so that we can dive into the inexhaustible, ever-expanding wonder and divine intoxication of the Supreme Universal Self.
Well, that's
on my website, shadoeart.com.
Shadoe, did you?
I think you'll like it. It's very colorful.
It's wonderful. Did you get to look at any of the videos about the Be Fantastic movement? To
make it more colorful than it otherwise
would be. Let me give you the live version of the Be Fantastic movement. You've been asked 1,000 times, "How are you?" Correct? It's not. Yeah. It's a rhetorical question. No one really cares to ask you that unless it's your parents or your kids. And I just found out recently in one of my interviews from a Dr. Theo where that question came from. Do you know the history of how are you?
No.
It comes from they get a rush. Say it, Shadoe. Yeah. Say, "I am fantastic" with emotion.
I am fantastic.
It really gets you laughing, it gets you smiling, and the reason is, first off, I'll bet you don't know what the word means. I'll bet you $1,000. Yeah, what do you think that word means?
Other than extraordinary, I mean, how do you put it in your terminology?
Wow, you just got the closest person. You just about nailed it there. Interviewed, only 41 as of today have met someone in their life that says they're fantastic. 41 out of 2,000. And then to me, that's a travesty. But the fantastic person, and the bee symbolizes, when you see the logo, you're going to love it, pollinating positivity. And a fantastic person is someone who's going to let someone in traffic, who's going to hold the door open for someone, who's a positive thinker. And there's so few of us out there, Shadoe. We're on a movement. There's 659 as we speak right now that have joined the movement. And it's in 10 countries, and it makes you feel great, Shadoe, when you say it. Watch what happens when you say it to other people. When you say
we're right on the same. We're on the same platform, because I have an artwork series called Rocky Waters, and it's a metaphor for difficult times, and the essence of it is one of the last pieces of a 12-piece set is called The Consequences of Optimism. And then the final one is called Shadow Vision, which has a poem with it that says, "There are opportunities, discoveries, endless possibilities, never-ending revelations. Why be worried? You can dream." And it goes on after that.
Wow.
Because I had a bad time just to test my imagination.
That's beautiful.
I totally believe in optimism, in the power of positivity, and how you have to focus your mind on what's right constantly.
Well, positive thoughts manifest positive action. I'm telling everyone who's joined the movement, do not ever, from now on, because today's the first day of the rest of your life, put a negative thought in your head. Don't say you're going to be late. Don't think it's not going to work out. Don't think he's not going to call you or she's not going to call you. Those negative thoughts, Thunder will attest how powerful our minds are, and these thoughts manifest actions. So, again, oh, by the way, I interviewed Bill Moran today, who you might know.
I don't think I do.
He knew you. Old-time radio show host. He's probably in his 80s. And he was asking me, because I told him I'm a motivational speaker, and he said, "What do you tell a guy who's just lost his job? He's living in Watts." And he asked me some tough questions, but I come out with it that if you lose your job, that's a great positive thing. You're going to try something new. You got to look at the positive in every negative aspect of your life. And
absolutely, totally agree.
It works out. I'm 64, and I've got a life and a lot of stories on how just thinking positive. I'm like Forrest Gump, to be honest with you. I just know it's going to work out, and it does. Well, it just works out.
Yes, it does. It's been that way for me as well. It's just got to never give up, no matter what. I did a radio serial years ago, maybe 15 years ago, called The Adventures of Brown Boy Love. And Brown Boy Love was this street philosopher that we would find at bus stations in different places all over the world. And he said he was a black belt in the art of ricochet. No matter what happens, you've got to bounce back. And just as he was about to tell us the most important thing we would ever hear, he would be hit by a bus and then clearly be dead. But a week later, we'd find him at a railway station in Turin, Italy, and he's standing on the tracks. And just as he says, no matter what happens, you've got to bounce back. And he says, and then he gets hit by a train.
Of course.
And clearly he's dead. But a week later, we find him in Barcelona, Spain, at a bullfight, the biggest, meanest bulls in the world. And so it goes. But it's always about that. No matter what happens, you've got to bounce back. Keep your sense of humor. I studied martial arts for 20 years under one of the top kickboxers in the world, probably the top, Benny DeJet. And he would say when you get into the ring, and he said to me maybe 1,000 times, bob and weave, keep moving. If you get hit, don't take it personal. Keep your sense of humor. And it's like it applies in life, it applies in everything. Keep moving, keep your sense of humor.
Yeah.
If you get hit, don't take it personal. Laugh it off. Keep going.
I tell people, when you first rode a bike, you fell down, you scraped your knee, you put a Band-Aid on it, you got back up, and you rode the bike again. That's life, you know?
Yeah.
To take the chance. Pedal down the road, you know? And most people, I don't know if you agree with this, Shadoe, but it's one of my philosophies, and my channel has a lot of these. They don't really understand how important every day is, how important today is. Until they hit 50, travel extensively, or experience death in the family or someone close by. And that's a lot of years to go by without really understanding or comprehending how fun today is, how great today is.
Yeah.
And one of my sayings is, life is a movie. You're the star of your movie, and you're the director of your movie. And if you don't direct every day to have, in every scene, in every day of your movie, to be fun, vibrant, exciting, educational, motivational, worth like a scene in a movie worth watching, then you're blowing it. You're the director.
Yeah.
You know, no one's directing your movie. You are. So go out there and have fun. Take some chances. You know, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, obviously, but this is for the people that are listening. You know, this whole show is about motivation. It's about, education. It's about knowledge. I mean, we're talking. We had a guy last week, and Thunder's bringing some really incredible guests in that has the cure for herpes virus or shingles, and if you can't afford it, he'll give it to you. The people we're having on our show aren't greedy, are the greedy ones. They're the ones that want to help and make the world a better place, as Thunder and I are trying to do, and as you are.
Well, I always tell people, if it's a limitless universe provides no limits to the possibilities of the sheer limitlessness of possibilities and guarantees limitless solutions to every impossible quandary.
Wow.
I believe that.
I'm glad we recorded that. I'm going to have to memorize that. Did you know a gentleman by the name of Doug Ivanovich?
I don't think so.
He was on our show the hour before you, and he's on every Thursday. What does he call those little sayings, Thunder? His sayings?
Dougisms?
Doug? No. There's a real name for it.
Dougitude?
No. You don't remember, Thunder? They're saying...
No, sorry, you got me. Congratulations. Mine got me on a question I can't answer.
You're supposed to be my memory on this show, Thunder. No, he's got these sayings they're called sayings, aneurysms, not called aneurysms, but and he's got 10,000 of them written down. And you remind me a lot of him when you say things like you just said, Shadoe.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant man. He's doing a thing called Storm Aid, and if you on our podcast, it's the one just before this. It's called Storm Aid. You might want to listen to it if you have time, which you don't. But he did Live Aid and did Farm Aid, and we're going to do some super concerts to help the victims of the storms. But not just monetarily, with new technologies, new energies, new ways of living. It's an exciting new time. Unfortunately, we're down to the last minute here with Shadoe. I hope we can have you on again. Shadoe, you've been great.
I love what you're doing. I love your attitude and your whole vision for the way things should be and how to handle things and the message you're carrying. It's we're right in sync. Good.
And we're happy to send you that EMF reducer. Just go to YouTube, sign up as a you probably have YouTube on your phone or what have you. Sign up as a subscriber, and with the number, the directions are on the website. Be fantastic today. Sign up with that. Put the number that you signed up at, which would be 660 if you do it now, and just say what the phone you want it sent to, and the instructions are on the website. Be fantastic today, as is this recording. It'll probably be up in about 2 minutes. We've got 4 seconds left. Shadoe, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much.